welcome back to another devlog. So this week is number 102. That means 2 more weeks and we're officially halfway. So I kind of started off the week, first real week back at work since the incident last week, but I kind of had a little bit of a roadmap. Like, I just had to finish off the ragdoll stuff, tidy it up, make sure that you just only have one ragdoll, not two separate for it, make sure I can control different situations depending on what happens. Like, I can trigger a kill animation or just a regular physics collision like that, and then an automatic get up with an animation, or trigger a kill animation where the controller won't get up. So it's a dynamic one, so I don't have to have two separate rigs going on. So I was able to finish up that functionality first thing to start off the week, and the next so I completed all that to main, and the next big section of work was doing the prototype for gem collection and the weapon upgrade system, and this was the next part of work that was probably going to take a fair amount of work to complete. Like, I didn't think like 3 weeks until the halfway mark, but you know, at least like a week or something, and we'll see how it goes. But so first thing I did was kind of make a bunch of gems, and I had to come up with a system, kind of design a system to kind of like, how is this going to work? I had a couple colors, but what I wanted to do, I was kind of bouncing around ideas, and I was just like, how many upgrades? So I had to kind of do a little bit of design work and decide how am I gonna handle this. So I decided on like a system. I came up with a system like 3 primary colors, which is red, green, blue, and those will handle like the basic energy pool upgrades. So if you get like a red gem, you can add it. You can upgrade your weapon energy. So that means you can fire for longer. There's more resources to consume. And then the other colors, and that kind of matches the actual colors of the UI bar that you see when you shoot. Like red for weapon, blue for stealth, and then green for shield, I believe. And then I was just like, okay, I want a few more upgrades than that. How do I work that? Well, there's other colored gems too. So the red, green, blue is the primary colors, but if you mix them, I think there's 3 more colors. There's purple, yellow, and cyan colors, and those can handle 3 more types of upgrades. And then the last one, which kind of like AI suggested, like would be a white crystal. That's like the supreme crystal. If you combine those, then you get like a really like a top-notch crystal that you can power. You have to sacrifice 3 crystals of each color, but you can get a white crystal to upgrade, and that gives you some good, a beefier power up. So there's kind of this give and take. Like, you can use singles to upgrade your mana pool, or you can use a double to their color. I think one is like energy recharge, right? The other one, like purple, is like melee damage, and then the yellow, I think, is shooter damage. So I think it kind of rounds it off pretty good for like, so 7 upgrades total, not too much, not too little, and then 7 different types of gems of color. So I made a bunch of gems that you can't interact with all of them yet, but I'll do that. That's one of the things to finish up. But basically, I did one of them where you, just like a mine, you can actually hit a button to interact with and pick it up. It's lacking sound effects and VFX and all that, but it does add the item to the inventory. And so after that was looking good, I kind of had to come up with, and I had my kind of design in place for the upgrade system. Um, I kind of moved on to starting like to think about how the UI is going to look when you upgrade it. Like I'd always planned to have this this machine. So when you interact with this power-up machine here, it serves two purposes. One, it allows you to go into the upgrade screen to upgrade your character stats, and also it allows you to hit the energize button in order to get like a energy recharge for like the room to do like a combat situation. But I needed to kind of figure out. Well, first thing I did was before I built anything, I kind of thought about like what I did was I kind of imagined in my head at first like how it would look, how it would work, but then I went into like a graphics art program and did like a mock-up of a design and kind of really put it like a basic mock-up like to paper of how it will look, all the different buttons, the functionality, and I think it was small enough that I can contain it all on one screen without having to make multiple screens, tabs, and all that. So I got a good mock-up design down, and then it was time to start putting it together inside the game. And what I did as I started to test, what I wanted to do for this is when you interact with this, I wanted to do a camera that would, well, you see right now what happens when you enter it in. It does a VCam transition, so it's just not like it actually frames the character at the left side of the screen. And I kind of had to do some testing and figuring out because I had to get the right components and camera and combinations, because what I wanted to do is that depending on the actual screen resolution, I had to make sure that the VCam would frame the actual character on the left side and the UI on the right side correctly, depending on the screen size, the width, and all that. And also when designing the UI, I had to make sure that it looks good on several different resolutions. I wanted to keep a static fixed width, so I didn't have to worry about dynamic resizing or anything like that. One of the things I had to compromise on, and there's actually on a shorter width, it actually makes it. I had to keep a static height as well, so all the elements were not dynamically changing around. So on a smaller screen, there's a bit of a above and below space, but I thought that's fine, as long as, it's not. It's like I wanted it to look like this for every screen, but that would mean kind of like scaling each element and all that. So I it's like I settled on this. This looks, just as good in my opinion. But getting the VCam to work right, that took a bit of doing. But the other thing was depending on, because this power station might be rotated differently depending on where I need to put it in the game. One of the things I had to do is make sure, and it wasn't working before with my regular VCam stuff, but when I got the transposer right, it doesn't matter which way this power-up station is rotated, it'll always set it to the left side correctly in this position. So that was working pretty good. And then I had to go review my feedbacks, because I was trying to figure out, like, how do I do a UI slide out kind of thing? Well, the answer again was feedbacks, because the feel package is actually pretty useful. It allows you to do a bunch of stuff, but it also can control the transforms and movement of things over time, like the position. So that's what I needed to do. So I did a feedback did some testing in order to kind of get it like not just a straight up, but maybe like a kind of a little bit of a lerp or whatever, and then an opposite feedback to dismiss. And doing a little testing just with a basic UI frame just to make sure it's all working. And then once that was all functional and working correctly, I had to start I had to start pretty much building all the UI. So I had to kind of construct and first, build, each frame, resize each frame, lay it out, and like lay it out horizontally, vertically, and yeah, just a bit of work to be sure. And it just kind of followed my mock specification of how that looked, and just make a few changes. But this is eventually what I came up with, and I'm pretty satisfied with the overall result. So it just looked like it didn't have any images at first. What I had to do is I had to come up with interaction. So I had all the UI, but I needed to make sure that UI interaction was the next thing. So I had to make buttons out of all these little frame rectangle views, or whatever you want to call them in Unity. In iOS they call them views, but I had to make sure these are interactable. So with the mouse and the controller, so like a button, and I had to I eventually got it tested right. And then once all these buttons were kind of interactable, I wanted to do some interaction testing. So that means when you click a button, maybe it shows like a highlight around here or something, or it does something, right? So now I was like kind of proceeding to like controller work, like a logic work. What happens when you select a button, and started building out like logic controllers for this. But I actually needed to get some sort of VFX, because I had done the actual my first pass at doing UI VFX for like the weapons and stuff like that. I think the result is good. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna keep it. But I was still looking for UI VFX, and this is another case where I needed some sort of UI VFX. Otherwise, I'd have to sit down and make it all again. And it took some doing and digging, but eventually I figured out that, like through like a obscure tutorial or whatever, that you can actually use particle effects in a 2D fashion with a world space camera canvas, which I have because I have to control it with brightness. But if you place it correctly in like inside the hierarchy, you can actually, it's actually, yeah, instead of doing like a custom shader for UI like I did before, you can actually use a particle system as a game object and just position it over and make sure the layer is above the UI, and yeah, you have a VFX on your UI pretty much. And that's how they do it in 2D games. So I kind of had to figure that out. And once I had that kind of concept figured out, I actually found a UI particle. It was made for like 2D games or stuff, but a UI particle effect system that I found that actually what I was looking for in the first place. It kind of gave me like square borders and a bunch of other things for a decent price. So so I actually applied that and just selected some choice VFX to actually say, signify you have this highlighted. And it came with most of the colors. It had like blue, red, green, I think even purple, but I kind of had to, for the last ones, I kind of had to modify these slightly, which was possible to get the purple, yellow, and cyan. But what I had to do here, I couldn't quite figure it out, but one of the things, the emissions the emission shader, like the overall. So I had to go in and actually just modify slightly the actual was it the emissions texture to remove all the saturation. That way, like, you can get a white crystal. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what combination of tint you put, you can never get true white. So just a little bit of a learning there, and I kind of had to do the same thing with other VFX like this. Yeah, the white electric and the white. Yeah, I had to go in and remove, like, a graphics image program and remove the. Oh, I found a buggy here. So, like, oh, there's, so mark that down. Yeah, so, for some reason I'm not able to go back to remember that. But that's the other thing. When I was getting all these interactions done, one of the things I wanted to do was have this kind of like, I never had the case before with my other UI work to have these like dynamic navigation resetting, but one of the things I didn't want to be able to do is, like, with the controller or the keyboard or anything else, you can't select these upgrade rows until you select a gem row. You have to select the gem row first and then highlights, then you move over, and then you can select the upgrade row and interact again, and that will actually upgrade the player upgrade. And so I had to kind of do logic to say once you activate this, it actually redoes an explicit navigation and points to this element so you can actually navigate to it. Right now I'm seeing that you can't actually navigate back from, once you go into the upgrade, you can't navigate back from the upgrade row, so that's a bug I just noticed. But the same thing here, this right side is like, you can combine 3 of the primaries in any combination, and then the logic to control, you know, once you have a possible upgrade, you get the image and the color, and then you can actually move down and select it to actually that's interesting too. Oh, it is working. Okay. Okay. So yeah, now if it's not, there's no gem, it just skips over. So like, so I had to hook into my logic state and make sure that under certain situations, some items can be selected and some can't, depending on what the selection state is. So, yeah. So the next thing I think after that, I had to go in and start doing work and getting the actual graphics in place. So I was using my little image icon creator, and that thing always fights me, and it was always a struggle, but I finally got it working and had like a process to get these actual images for the different gems selected, and I got those assets ready. But then I tried to do the same thing with the upgrade rows. I was trying to do like more of a different aspect ratio and kind of take not screenshots, but like higher resolution images that I could actually fit onto with like clipping to each row. And I had ideas for the main one, like stealth, weapon, and shield. Those, you know, and then melee and shooting. I think those came out, but the energy recharge, I think that's okay. But power up time, I don't know if I couldn't really think of a graphic that actually signified that sort of thing. Power up time, that's like kind of another mechanism that's yet to be fleshed out. I just needed a 7th upgrade, but that's there for now. But I had to use the actual screen Unity recorder to get screen captures from a camera, and then I finally got some images, and I think that fills out the graphical needs of this UI interface. And then for the energize button, I just used one of the VFX in the package I thought was appropriate for like energization. And then when you you interact, it'll do one more VFX. So I think it's pretty solid and pretty good. I might need more refinement, but this is like first prototype stage of this interface, and I think it's pretty pretty good to start with. One of the things I had to do also was signify when you do an upgrade. You see those red bars? So that when you interact to do an upgrade, there's a little VFX that plays, and then it'll actually add one more bar, UI bar, in the sequence to signify your current level of upgrade visually. So each one has that UI element, and there's a controller controlling that. So once that was all looking good, graphics and interaction for the most part, it was time to actually hook everything up to actual like data, right? And this is the first kind of time where I have to track something other than like checkpoint and level data, right? I have to track two more things persistently. I have to track the actual inventory gem count to actually be displayed. So I have to pull the actual data to this interface, and then interaction should update not only the inventory but the actual persistent data layer as well. So when it comes to gems and using them and manipulating them, there's actually two layers. There's the vector inventory system I'm using to pick up items, but also I have to kind of mirror that and reflect that data in actual primitive data in my saved data structure. So when I reload the game, I know which gems I have and the quantity of such. And and that was a fair bit of work, like adding and beefing up my current game save manager. Like, I'm glad I had that structure already in place to like expand upon for this, because I knew I was going to be able to have to track other things in the game. So I just had to expand upon that to track this kind of persistent data for the player. The other portion that I had to do involved tracking the actual player's upgrade state. So I have to actually track as well, like not just the inventory, but what the actual player's upgrade level is, right? So that way you load it, that the melee damage is on level 1 or level 2 or whatever it is. So that was a little bit more easier because it's just straight up. There's no inventory to deal with. It's just straight up like data, like level 1, level 2, and then per upgrade. So, but I'm pretty happy with my actual system design, and I kind of had to struggle a little bit with figuring out, especially with the inventory, how to come up with like a foolproof design so future me wouldn't actually get into a situation where I would corrupt data. So I went through the whole thing, like migration procedure and policy, and then I decided on like pulling the actual right item and getting the ID, not because there was an issue with using the IDs to get the actual items, because in the actual item manager, let me pull it up here. So it took some doing to figure out. Yeah, if you go to item list here, this the problem with this is that I had to really kind of review the system I had so far. So for weapons, it kind of works off its own weapon ID, which is stable, but in the whole entire thing, each one has an ID. But the problem is that I was seeing, if I use IDs and I add something like in the middle, I change the order, all these IDs would shift down, and like all my save data would be corrupted. And And if I did that, so I had to be careful not to do that, but also if I did that in production, so I had to consider what I can do in development versus what I absolutely cannot do in production and understand that clearly and kind of review that and just be aware of that pitfall. But I was working with it and I was like, okay, well, I'll use IDs until I realized that when you're adding new items, you you can reorder the structure to keep, guns grouped with guns, gemmed grouped with gems, and the IDs can change around. You can get things by IDs, but the ID position is not stable and unique. What is stable and unique is actually the actual item name. Like when you're adding an item, Invector enforces uniqueness, so you can't accidentally add an item of the same name. And if you stick to that, you'll have a unique string that you can always search and reliably either pull the right item, like it has all the right data attached to it, or even get the ID that you need in some situations. So switching to using the actual item name is the way to go for this system. Um, I'm not sure how they use it under the hood, if it's a dictionary or if it's fast lookup. Like who knows, who cares, because the actual I can't imagine having hundreds and hundreds of items in this game, so that's not even a consideration. But as soon as I got that in place, I was able to make it all, the actual the actual getting the item pretty foolproof, like nice and using actual enumerations with definitions of the string, um, instead of typing in a string here. I just make sure that it's much better so you don't make a typo or something. The only thing I have to watch out for, the only rule I have to abide by, is that in development up until production, I can actually, if I really wanted to change a name, I could do that, but I'd have to update it in my global list in order to have it fixed. I wouldn't have to do any migrations, but when it comes to production, I absolutely must not change any names at that point. If I do, then I do need a migration because I will break my persistent data. So that's one of the things to understand. And then I may, do a bunch of work to the game save state manager and making it be able to track upgrade data and inventory data. And then having all the nice things, nice tools like I usually do. So instead of having just like a field or two like I did before to actually reset the data, I actually did like a mirror save data profile, and you can pretty much, what you can do is it has all the nice little features, like you can set all the data in the entire structure that will reflect and save persistently, or you can just do a couple things like I just want to set the inventory. You set the inventory section, so I have it all broken up by system, upgrade data, and inventory. And the whole structure, there's going to be like different components about what the overall structure is tracking. So that's kind of how that works. Anyway, that's like that. Anywho, and then being able to, like, if I do need to do a migration, I have functionality like with versions. It'll detect the version and do a chain migration from one version to the other if need be. So I'm all prepared for that. And that was getting the whole data persistence. So now it's all persistent, so if I make changes on the upgrade, the underlying system data will be affected, and it'll be able to remember the actual state the next time I come back to the game. It'll be able to remember which upgrades you have and then your actual inventory. So good stuff. that pretty much was, I was pretty much coming to the finish line on this prototype. The last thing to really do, I think, I'm saving the SFX and VFX for like picking up and actually interacting with this menu. So there'll be like feedbacks, like, you know, when you upgrade something, just a little bit more fit and polish. Like when you like interact or select something, there'll be like UI sounds, you know, just for each thing. When you power up, there'll be a little, you know, some, or maybe some, there's already VFX there, but maybe some like feedback, maybe like a screen shake or something. But yeah, just do that same thing with sound, with pick up the gem and stuff. And so I'll save that for later. But the last thing is to actually, the last piece is to hook up the upgrade data to the relevant system, just as a preliminary prototype. So the first three were obvious and easy, like, you know, based off the upgrade level, just multiply that by a factor of whatever. So that adds like an overall base pool resource energy unit to the overall thing. And I got that done, but there's still, was it four more to go ahead and hook up that actually read from the main persistent data source to actually affect core mechanic system. So I just want to get those hooked up on a service level, and later I can actually refine the actual, you know, the amount bonus for each one, or, you know, fine tune that. But as long as the systems are hooked up and functional, that will complete the prototype for the game's upgrade system, the UI and all that. So and that will be the end of that leg, pretty much. I think there's one more thing to do for the leg, but after that, it's pretty much on to the enemy AI epic. There's a bunch of things to do with that. That might take another week or so. After that, then we're on to the final level 1 gameplay pass. So still a couple more weeks of work on my roadmap, but this was another week in the bag, week 102. And we will sign out for now and check you later.